for the first time. Can I also apologise that my voice may give in halfway through the first item, I suspect, but I'll certainly do my best to get through the course of the meeting. I could also remind everyone that this meeting's been recorded and the recording will be available for public listening. Okay, can I ask, do we have any apologies for today's meeting?
Chairman, we have apologies from Councillors Carruthers, Collins and Mail. Presume 16 members present.
Okay, thanks very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations? Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. Can I say that I am a member of the Fisheries Local Action Group, which obviously relates to items 8 and 18 in the agenda, sir. I'm also a member of the Southern Upland Partnership, which refers, as mentioned in item number 11, and a draft directive in Swestrans, which is mentioned in item number 19. I would want it noted, Chair, with your leave, but I do not consider that my membership of any of these organisations precludes me from participating in the decision-making process in relation to these items. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. Ronnie?
Declaration item in item 12. I've got a property in Church Street, but it's not part of the. It's not something that I need to leave the room for.
So much, Ronnie. Any other declarations? Okay, just before we move on to item number 3, you'll recall that a couple of meetings ago, Alistair actually moved that we write to John Swinney, the Finance Secretary, to request a meeting to discuss the issue around the Bellwyn scheme, and members have received a copy of the letter that I sent to the Minister. That meeting actually took place just before Christmas, and we had quite a detailed discussion around where we thought that the government were effectively wrong in their interpretation of the Bellwyn scheme. The outcome of the meeting effectively was the Minister agreed that if I wrote to him and detailed where we disagreed, if you like, he would take another look at the application. So once that letter's prepared, I'll make sure that members receive a copy of that. I'm not holding my breath that we will get any change in policy, but at the very least, what we'll get is a more detailed response as to the outcome of the application. But certainly, he did listen to the points that were being made. That meeting, incidentally, took place at the same time as the South of Scotland Alliance meeting, where we raised, myself, Councillor Collins, raised a number of issues along with colleagues from the Scottish Borders. And what I'll do is I'll draft a note to go to members just outlining what issues were raised at the meeting and what the Minister's response. I think it would be fair to say it was actually a very constructive meeting, and we agreed a way forward on a number of items. So I'll detail a note to members around those issues. And finally, on the issue of meeting with ministers, myself and the leader and also Councillor Martin and a number of officers met with Paul Wheelhouse, the Environment Minister, on the evening he visited Dumfries. I think it was the 30th of December. He visited Dumfries to witness for himself, frankly, the devastation that the flooding was causing in the local area. And we were in the vicinity meeting with local businesses and looking at the work being done by the council at the time. So we took the opportunity to raise with the Minister obviously the issues around flooding, but also our view that we wanted and were requesting government support, first of all for the White Sands flood prevention scheme that the council were bringing forward, but also around the issue of expanding the SEPA flood warning schemes in other areas. So I think the Minister was relatively receptive to that and asked that we provide more details, and we'll certainly be taking that forward in the coming months. Just on that issue, can I pay tribute to staff within this department, but also right across the council, and also people in local communities for the work they did during the flooding. I think it's fair to say, although the White Sands floods on a relatively regular basis, there were some communities where the flooding was really unprecedented, and I think we should pay tribute to local communities for the way in which the resilience they've shown in the area in order to deal with some of the appalling conditions we face. So I certainly like to place that on record. Okay, item number 3, the minute of the ad hoc subcommittee of the Planning, Housing and Environment Services meeting of the 30th of October. Can I ask if is anyone prepared to move that as a true record? Jeff?
I move it.
Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Okay, Jim, thanks very much. Happy to agree that, members, yep. Okay, the minute of the Housing Subcommittee meeting of the 12th of November 2013. I'm happy to move that as a true record of the meeting. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
Okay, Craig, thanks very much. Okay, item number 5, the minute of the Planning, House and Environment Services meeting of the 12th of November 2013. Do I have someone prepared to move that as a true record? John?
Happy to move that.
Okay, thanks.
Happy to second.
Okay, Ronnie seconding that. Okay, item number 6, the minute of the Planning, House and Environment Services meeting of the 20th of November. Okay, Jeff, happy to move that.
Happy to move. Yep.
Do you have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Okay, Ronnie. Thanks very much. Okay, yeah. Just before we move on to item number 7, I want to very briefly outline a slight change in the agenda today. Item number 10, which is on the Waste Management Recycling PFI contract, there's nothing within that report, I think, that makes it an exempt item, but I'm conscious that members will actually have quite a lot of detailed questions around that particular item, particularly in relation to the contract itself. What I'm concerned about is that if members were to ask a question, that would effectively make it an exempt item answering that question because it was confidential information. We end up in a position where we have to move that it becomes an exempt item. I don't want to do that halfway through the agenda, so what I'm suggesting we do is we move the item to the end of the agenda, and should members raise any questions that require confidential information to be provided, then at least that takes place at the end of the meeting rather than halfway through the agenda where we end up making it exempt item. So are members happy for us to do that? Yeah. It may very well be that doesn't happen, that the questions can be answered in the public domain, but that's just in case that can't happen. So we'll move item number 10 to the end of the agenda. Okay, item number 7, which is the routine budget monitoring report. It simply updates members on where we are and also the break-even position. Can I ask the Director if he's got anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, do members have any questions on item 7? Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Chair, it's just a question on the further measures to be identified as such, and I appreciate this report takes us up to the end of November, and I'd just like to ask the Director if we have any further information on those measures that might be identified for the extra savings to take us to a break-even position.
Yes, these measures are in the expenditure associated with travel, with training, attendance at conferences, all the usual things that we can control directly. And if we recall, last year at this time, we were reporting to the end of November 195,000 potential overspend, and we drew in our belts and we came in on the button. So the same things will apply this time round. Obviously, as part of the service reviews, we've also introduced reduced working hours with some of the staff, and some of these arrangements have already kicked in, and that will help us work down towards a balanced budget.
Okay, do we have any further questions on item 7? No? Okay, if we move to the recommendation, are members happy to note 2.1 and 2.2? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, item number 8, which is the Economic Development Fleet and Infrastructure Asset Class Capital Programme Monitoring Report. Again, the regular report, but also I think there are a number of areas in which members will have a number of decisions to make. So can I again ask the Director if he's got anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair, only to say if members are interested, we do have some photograph evidence of the damage that we've suffered following the floods, and particularly the tide surges on our coastline. There for members if they so wish.
Members happy to look at that? Yeah. Okay, I'll hand over to Stephen.
Thanks. In the stewardship, again, there was some clean-up costs and some minor damage to coastal infrastructure that we've identified. And in the Wigtown area, general kind of clean-up costs, and we reckon that was over about 100,000 in terms of the additional response due to the adverse weather, due to these two flood events, the fluvial flooding on the 30th of December and the kind of coastal flooding impacts on the 3rd of January. And the idea is that we're looking to manage that, or DG First looking to manage that within the kind of the winter maintenance budget on the basis of kind of adverse weather response. Coastal damage in the estuary, some minor issues that they're doing in the lake. We've identified costs of about £4,000. And non-coastal issues, the A762 and the A713, there were impacts in the D-Ken catchment with the discharge of water through from the Galloway hydro scheme, as well as the kind of high water levels in the rivers anyway. And there's still some inspections to be carried out at Kipford on the seawall there by colleagues in engineering design. Wigton tended to take the brunt of the damage, particularly with the coastal infrastructure, and we've got some photographs later and I can just show you that, some examples of that damage. But effectively at Port William we're looking at about 30,000, these are initial estimates of costs of damage to council infrastructure. Damage at Port Patrick's, Stairhaven, Dye Mill and Drumore, we're looking at fairly significant damage. The road is closed there just now, as you're probably aware, and immediate repairs, or kind of immediate repairs that are directly adjacent to the road will be undertaken today with infill of some of the voids, and the idea is that the road will be either open tomorrow or Thursday at the latest. That's the A716 at Kilstay leading into Drumore. So on the 3rd of January, the coastal event was a high astronomical tide. There was a 1.5 metre storm surge due to the low pressure system that's over the country, and we also had gale force winds from the southwest pushing the water up onto the Solway coast. That's what happened at Drumore. I'm assuming this is a photograph taken by one of the residents at Drumore. I'm grateful to them for capturing that. You can see the road is really in front of the garden wall there, covered in water. Another shot of Drumore and the kind of impact of the waves and the storm surge. Some of the clean-up at Drumore, a lot of the beach ended up on the road, and that's where some of the kind of reactive costs have come in. Some of the more significant structural damage, there's quite a long length of coastal infrastructure retaining the road, the A716 north of Drumore, the kind of Kilstay area. Top left, you can see the damage immediately adjacent to the road. The other pictures, bottom pictures, show some of the damage to the sheet pile and the concrete elements of the coastal infrastructure retaining features. Port Patrick, again, some fairly spectacular impacts with the waves, lifting some of the surface materials at the top of the seawall at Port Patrick. In the bottom left, you can actually see it's been lifting and taking out some of the mortar on the seawall there, just with that wave action running up the wall. Port William, damage to the seawall there on the road. Just an example of kind of Port William in the harbour area there in terms of the level of flooding that was achieved. Various shots of Port William, some top left, you can't see it very clearly, but that's gabion baskets that have been damaged and burst open. And the other photographs show some of the kind of close-ups of areas of the seawall that have been damaged at Port William. Damage at Dye Mill, again, some of the sheet piling on the front face of the coastal infrastructure has been damaged and loosened off. And at Stairhaven, some of the rock armour there has been moved about and is starting to encroach onto the road area. So A747, again, a lot of material dumped onto the public road requiring clean-up. Glencaple, some of the extent of the flooding that we had there with the high astronomical tide and the storm surge. And that's the new tea room bottom left that you can see at Glencaple. They weren't flooded, but I understand there were people were in the tea room for quite a long time while they waited for the water to go back down again. Stranraer, our harbour, quite unusual to see, but the water level's almost up at the top of the quayside there. What it does do is it hides the damage to the quay wall quite well. And Isle of Whithorn, inundation again, and properties shown. You can see the properties in top left, top right pictures, some of them using the floodgates that they've procured through the council's flood subsidy scheme. Kingham Quay, again, fairly significant impacts. The photograph bottom left and bottom right is the Swan at Kingham, and they have quite a serious size. Bottom right, you can see they've set quite a serious size floodgate, and I think we were like a couple of inches water level off the top of that, inundating that property there. Some fluvial flooding events. So those photographs there were really the kind of coastal events on the 3rd of January. I'll just flick through some of the events the 30th of December. A number of locations on some of our significant water courses were affected. on the Cree and on the Nith. We don't have photographs of Kirkconnell, but there was obviously quite significant flooding there as well. These were air shots taken. Police helicopter was mobilised from Police Scotland, and we picked up some of the aerial shots. Heath Hall at Dumfries, Monnie Ive, fairly extensive flooding. Kirkton on the Nith, the floodplain filling up. Thieves Castle, I think, is probably kind of mid-right of the photograph in the floodplain on the river there. And Crossmichael on the D Ken catchment in the mid of the photograph there. Cursfairn, there's quite a lot of significant flooding at Cursfairn and issues with vehicles on the road actually exacerbating that situation in terms of pushing water into properties with people ignoring the road closure. And at Newton Stewart and the Cree, quite a lot of high levels, and I think there was maybe at least one property flooded in the count at the end. Bottom right, there's a tree there has adjoined itself to sitting against one of the abutments, and there's somebody upside down with a chainsaw trying to move that before there's any further damage or backup on the river. So that was just a kind of run through of some of the flooding events for the fluvial flooding and the coastal flooding.
Thanks very much for that, Stephen. I think that was very dramatic to say the least, and I think shows you the sheer scale of the damage. Do any members have any questions for Stephen just on the issue around flooding, George?
Thanks, Chair. You'll have to excuse my voice as well, actually. It was just on the situation in the Kendee catchment area on that dreaded Monday when there seemed to be a sort of deluge of water come down from Loch Doon. And locals are saying that this is because the sluice gates were actually opened on the Monday morning up at Loch Doon. I think we need some sort of answers from Scottish Power, if that is the case. Why were they opened on the Monday when there was a hell of a rain coming down anyway? Because I've never seen in 30 years Parton and Crossmichael flooded the way they were that Monday a couple of weeks ago. So I think we need, and to be fair, there were 2 inches of rain in Dalry or up at Earlston Dam overnight. That 2 inches of rain, I don't think equated to the flood which actually came down the valley. I mean, it rose in literally about 2-3 hours. There were people drove into the town to do shopping on Monday lunchtime. They couldn't get back home 2 hours later because the bit at Parton Mill was about 4 feet deep. And I mean, this didn't happen gradually over a 12-hour period. This happened in a couple of hours. So I think we need answers to why Loch Doon people are saying Loch Doon was emptied. The natural exit for Loch Doon is north. Loch Doon is dammed up there for the Galloway Power Scheme, and that's the reason it's there. Otherwise, the natural exit for the water from Loch Doon goes into the River Doon and out to Ayr. So I would like to know why the Kendee Valley was flooded. If that was what happened, I don't know. I would like to find out, so. Thanks.
Stephen, yeah.
Yeah, just to come back, Councillor Prentice, on that. There were a number of concerns raised about the possible impacts of Scottish Power discharging through the Galloway Hydro Scheme from the lochs further up in the catchment, where we've organised a meeting with them on Monday. James MacLeod will attend that. One of our colleagues from the Major Emergency Scheme will attend that, and Jane Vermeesh, the local, the Stewartry Works team leader, will attend that meeting with Scottish Power. And that's really just to get a better understanding on the mechanism of the flooding and the contribution that the Scottish Power discharging into the Kendee catchment, what that added to the extent of the flooding, trying to get a better understanding of that. I think we've maybe got issues with Scottish Power in terms of better communications and warnings if that's going to happen. I think we can understand the position that when the water levels in the dams reaches a certain level, that there are critical fail-safes that need to be employed in terms of bringing the water level down. And unfortunately, sometimes that means that has to come down quite quickly and be discharged into the catchment. I understand that at Loch Doon, and I think you're saying that it normally discharges into the Ayrshire side and the rivers on that side. Yes, I understand that at very high water levels, there's water brought back. There has to be discharge back into the Galloway hydro scheme as well. So I think we've got a bit of work just with Scottish Power at the start of next week, just to understand the mechanisms there and look at the communications to make sure that what they're doing, they're fully required to do or justified in doing, but to try and manage the kind of control or the communications on that and get a better understanding of how that's been impacting and flooding within the Upper Stewartry area.
Okay, Patsy.
Yes, it was just on the flood prevention help that we give with regards to the likes of floodgates and things. I think we did quite a lot when we had floods about 2 years ago, did we not? And rather than sandbags, were people not offered sort of flat pack things that expanded when they got wet and things? I just wondered how that investment that we made then, how it played out when we had floods again this time, and if in actual fact they do work. Because you see on television and things, it's always sandbags that are going out, but when you get such high floods, I don't think there's enough sandbags to do that job, whereas these other easier to manage preventions, I just wonder how effective they are.
The flood pod was deployed. It was in Newton Stewart at the start of the flood events, and we left materials behind. The flood pod that the council has, it's a kind of half-unit container, and you've maybe seen pictures in the news of it. But effectively, we stocked that with the flood gates. That was the blue gates that you saw in some of the photographs earlier, and they fit various widths of door. They tend to be about a metre something high. They don't go any higher because if you're actually retaining more water than that, you've got structural issues in terms of the building. So they will retain water to a certain level. The other thing we have in the flood pod is flood sacks, which are the kind of the gel sacks that we put out, and you charge them in the water and they expand and they work better than sandbags because they will actually seal the water better. The ideal scenario is you have a floodgate and you maybe have some flood sacks at the bottom to pick up any seepage. Over the kind of flooding in the Monday and the Tuesday, and certainly with the coastal flooding, there was a lot of sandbags deployed by DG First, and they put resources onto doing that. Sandbags are less effective, although people do call out for them, and certainly we had plenty of calls for people looking for sandbags and more sandbags, and there was a demand that exceeded, the capacity to produce. They're a lot less effective. They will not cut down the water as much as the flood sacks, but people still, it's part of what we can provide at relatively short notice and assist in some locations. But the floodgates and the flood sacks, we still have the funding to continue to provide that flood subsidy scheme that we started 2-3 years ago, and there's still some of that kind of revenue funding has been carried forward into each financial year to draw down against that. After flooding events, we'll go back out to the people that we gave floodgates to, and we'll give them a bit of a sell on the flood product scheme.
Alistair.
Thanks very much, Chair. My comments would be primarily relating to the situation in Newton Stewart with the river, the flooding of the River Cree, not forgetting the coastal flooding which obviously took place, Chair, in Garrison and Isle of Whithorn. Can I say, first of all, that I would certainly echo your sentiments and from a Mid-Galloway perspective about the work and effort, effective work and effort that our staff and the communities, staff from other agencies and communities put into effect. But notwithstanding, sir, in the Newton Stewart context, to quote the Duke of Wellington, it was a close-run thing, and that's twice in 2 years. Now, I appreciate that there's been flooding in the White Sands for an awful lot longer, so I will endeavour to keep a sense of perspective. But I would hope we're having a meeting. We set up a flood action group, Chair, in Newton Stewart after the first flooding last November 2012. That is due to report in a substantive fashion next week. I would hope, in fact, that following on from that, we will be able to work out an action plan and deal with tangible proposals which will mitigate, the impact on future occasions. Let me say in passing that I would pay tribute, Chair, to Mr. Speedy and his staff for the time, energy, work and effort that they put into bringing this forward and bringing it to fruition. But the point still remains that I think we've obviously got to address where we can and put in place such works as is deemed appropriate in relation to all of these locations. I would also make the plea yet again, Chair, and I would hope that it will be addressed certainly in the Newton Stewart or Cree Valley context next week in the consultant's report. we've got to look at, the issues involving the whole of the catchment area. I've continually indicated there's no point in trying to deal with this issue when the water gets the length of Newton Stewart. I think we've got to be looking at making use of the likes of floodplains, etc., and flood meadows, for want of a better term, further up the catchment area. And if need be, contacting the likes of the relevant landowners and asking, in fact, if we can enter into some form of arrangement, protocol, call it what you will, Chair, in relation to trying to divert some of the water away before it gets into the water courses, and in that way it has a more it runs off over a wider period. Because I hear exactly what George is saying, Councillor Prentice is saying, in relation to the Doon and Loch Doon areas. Flash floods, they're basically, by their very nature, you can't deal with them, and I think we've got to try, insofar as we can, to get away from that. Thank you.
A valid point, Alistair, and certainly the impact on the Cree was one of the issues we raised with the Minister when he was here at the same time, just to highlight the fact that we don't have, for example, a SEPA run flood warning scheme in the area, and that was one of the points that was certainly made with the Minister. But I don't know if Stephen wants to add anything to respond to Alistair.
Yes, just as the Councillor knows, there's a meeting with the Cree Valley Flood Action Group next week. The idea there, we would present in some detail the options that we've looked at. We've had our consultancy input look at in terms of upstream storage, if that's viable, in terms of protection works in the town, if that's viable, the kind of cost, the benefits, and the flood warning schemes. And the idea is to present in some detail to the Flood Action Group next week on that, and get their feedback on that.
Yeah, Jim.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I'm kind of surprised at the question George posed and the answer he got, that indeed the Loch Doon did empty into the water course, because I hear a lot of gossip and innuendo in Killahome that the Scottish Water emptied the Afton Reservoir into the water stream to protect it as well. And I was inclined, to maybe accept that as being accurate. But given what George is saying, the response that's been given, I think we should inquire to see whether or no the same set of circumstances were employed. Because if it's madness, and I'd be furious if at the very highest peak any flood, a reservoir is opened to add to that impact, which eventually floods Killahome and ultimately floods the White Sands as a consequence of that. I think it's absolutely immoral, and if that's right, I think we've got to investigate first of all to find out the accuracy of these allegations, and then have meeting with Scottish Water to try and unravel why it's done and what we can do to ensure that certainly doesn't happen again. On the issue of Killahome and Kirkconnell, I realise we don't have images, but it was badly affected by water, and that's a given, and I can give you some images if you actually want them. The problem they encountered was the nearest council store is sand for sandbags was 30 miles away. So I think we maybe need to set up a scheme whereby we have for want of a better word, a contact or contract with local builders, construction companies to make available sand in an emergency, because very often the emergency is relatively quick when folk realise that there's a risk of water entering the property. To have to drive to Dumfries or wait for a vehicle to be loaded and brought 30 miles doesn't really cover or address the issue maybe as quickly as we would hope. So maybe it's something that Stephen would want to look at, as how we can ensure we couldn't possibly store sand in our local depots for the possibility of this event happening in 20 years' time, but we should have a list of locations where we can access sand and sandbags at relatively short notice. And the last thing is a question that Stephen Will can answer. These blue floodgates that we persuade folk to buy, if they're installed properly, do they actually keep the water out absolutely, or do they just delay the inevitable? And I'm not talking about water cascading over the top of them, I'm talking about finding its way through, given that water can find its way through many very small fissures and cracks. What is the effectiveness of that particular product?
Okay, if I just come back on the first point, we were aware of issues on or concerns with the Afton Reservoir at Kirkconnell, Kellerholm, and we've asked Scottish Water what actually happened there. Was there a discharge of water? And we'll find out what the, any part that played. We reckon it's probably difficult to think that it's probably fairly remote from the catchment in the Upper Nith and not a large reservoir to think that it was any great impact on what was quite a high water level anyway. But we're asking Scottish Water for that information. I think in terms of dams generally, if there's potential for overtopping, I think we'll find that these organisations have the powers to discharge the water. It is at the wrong time in terms of flows in the catchments, but the alternative can be a catastrophic failure of the dams, and particularly some of the large dams we have in the Ken D catchment. That's something to be avoided in terms of the impacts that would have in itself. And I would imagine if we were to check that these rights are probably enshrined in legislation that dates back to the placement of the Galloway Hydro Scheme. They will have certain powers to discharge into the water courses. And I think it comes down to its communications and understanding what the impacts might be when that's going to happen. On the sandbags issue, I think part of the education we have kind of post-flood events is to make people realise that they have a responsibility to protect their property. The council does have a sandbag policy, and there is a kind of hierarchy of response within the resources that are available. Sandbags aren't the only solution, and are not the complete solution. And there isn't, we could look at putting more money into resourcing and providing them, but they're not the best answer. And to a certain extent, waiting for the council to come along and rescue somebody is not always going to be, effective in terms of the resources that we can deploy. Particularly when we had such kind of region-wide events at the very end of December there, and resources were all over the place and quite stretched. And there has to be a bit of preparation by the homeowners through the use of the floodgates and the flood sacks. Is a bit of the balance as well as the response that the council can provide. So it has to work both ways in terms of preparation on the council side, but I think homeowners have, need to be aware they have quite a lot of responsibility. If there's going to be a flood warning, if there's going to be rising river levels, that there should be some preparation. And to that end, the kind of floodgates, your question, Councillor Dempster, about the floodgates, they will work well if there's a good seal. The gates are kind of a jacking mechanism, a kind of steel sheet frame with a neoprene, it's like a wetsuit cover on them, and they will create a seal if there's a very good smooth surface to bed against. Where there isn't, the other thing that we provide as well is mastic to try and create that seal. But the best scenario is that you put the gate in, the floodgate in with the mastic if that's required, that you have some flood sacks at the bottom to soak up any seepage of water. But they will hold the water back for quite a long time. And there were a number of locations, I know, particularly in the Nith, where properties were saved from flooding with the correct use of the floodgates.
Okay, Jim, do you want to come back in?
Please, aye. I hope then, when you get a response from Scottish Water, that I would hope members would want it, but certainly I'd want it, because I think they have a responsibility to tenants, and whilst I understand and appreciate they wouldn't want a catastrophic dam failure, to just somehow open the sluice gates and let the water go, and that be the end of it, I don't think it's acceptable either. They should have a degree of responsibility on the outcome, and if that's flooding, then they need to step up to the plate and assist, I would think, with restoration. But that's for another day. But I would hope that we get a reply, and that Stephen would be kind enough to share with me, and I would hope all members would be interested in both George's question and mine about what actually happens when organisations decide to discharge water and there is a follow-on consequence to that.
Thanks, I'm sure we can ensure that happens. You want to come in on that very point, Finlay? Okay.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to add my voice to what has already been raised. We had exceptional high water levels round about Parton and Christmichael, and I don't think we had exceptional rainfall. So there was obviously something happened. I think we need to look at what sort of system Scottish Power have in terms of mitigating the flooding with regards to maybe emptying the dams before, because it was all very clear that we had a weather warnings in place for a few days. Now, the flooding at Kirkconnell and Christmichael, however, had no bearing on the tidal surge, which affected the flooding, the coastal flooding. So I think we need to ask some quite serious questions of what processes Scottish Power have in place to to mitigate any flooding due to the dam levels being higher.
Okay, I'm conscious that we've moved slightly off the capital programme monitoring report during the last 10 minutes, but I've got two final speakers on the flooding issue, Jeff and then Ian, then we'll move on to the content of the report.
Just some of the experience of trying to deal with the floods in terms of the office at the bottom of the Vennel. We did put the floodgate up, but obviously the height of the flood, I think, was such that it overtopped the floodgate. But in terms of the gel-filled substitutes for the sandbags, the problem is they're too buoyant and they tend to float away, especially when you've got vehicles going down the Vennel. So you put the flood, you hydrate the gel-filled bags, you put them in front of the barrier, a car or a truck goes down the Vennel, creates a bow wave, and the whole thing floats away. And certainly one point in the White Sands, you could see sort of dozens of these floating away down the Vennel, down the Nith, and presumably out into the Solway estuary. And also, just as a minor point, if these are punctured after the floods go down, the gel itself is very, very slippery. So you need to have some sort of cleanup procedure, otherwise, effectively, you've got a very slippery surface on the Vennel, so it's something we need to look at in future. So I think possibly what you need to have is a combination of the gel-fill bags and sandbags, the sandbags to hold the gel-fill bags in position, and traders who are looking for them, sandbags, the conventional sandbags, were told they need to get them from the Annan Road depot. I think a better solution might have been if a lorry load had been placed in the car park between the White Sands and the Vennel, so the traders could actually go there and actually use those to prop it up. And one thing which has been pointed out by various traders who weren't affected by flooding in the White Sands and Buccleuch Street was Scottish SP Energy had made the decision to relocate the main distribution board from the Sheriff's Courts to the bottom of the bottom of the Vennel. So all that day they had teams standing by waiting to switch off the main power. And when they decided that the water was actually going to get into that distribution board about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think they switched off the power, which meant that all the businesses in the White Sands who hadn't been affected, and those in Buccleuch Street, like the Caven's Arms and Barbers, had to close down. So effectively, they lost most of a day's trading because of that. So I think we need to go back to SP Energy and say either they look at relocating it elsewhere outside of the floodplain. I mean, it's a totally stupid place to police a major facility such as that, or alternatively lift it up so it isn't affected by the water. So I think we do need to go back. And I mean, you know, the manager or the owner of the Cavens made the point that they'd lost more or less a full day's trading because of that.
Thanks for that, Jeff. A number of other points that to take up with Scottish Power. Could I bring Ian in finally on this issue?
It's just briefly, Chair, to express my appreciation for the work that the council staff and the emergency response team did in the Wigton area, as did many members of the community. It was an excellent job.
Okay, and finally I'm going to bring the director in.
Thank you, Chair. The next step following these events is for the recovery team to meet, and I chaired that group, and the issues raised by members this morning will certainly take these into consideration to ensure that we continue to learn from the experiences. Thank you for that, much appreciated.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, can we move on to the detail of the report then, folks? The capital monitoring report. Does anyone have any questions on the report itself? Graham.
Just a comment, Chair, when we come to the recommendations, 2.6 approved the projects that were recommended by Wigton Area Committee. Just to put myself and my record straight, I've always been an advocate of local democracy. I think more decisions should be taken at a local area. I did not agree with Wigton Area Committee that day with certain aspects, in particular the 100,000 for the boat storage area. But like it or not, Wigton Area Committee took a decision, and I will go along with it today and not be obtuse.
Yeah, thanks very much, Graham. Can I bring Jim in at this point?
Yeah, thanks for that. Like Councillor Foster, regarding the Wigton Area Committee, I did agree. However, as outlined in page 46, regarding the projects and the description, there's a little bit of discrepancy to what was actually decided at Wigton Area Committee and what is actually laid out in the report. from memory and looking at the records of the Wigton Area Committee regarding the first item, the event trailer stage, we actually asked for that money to be ring-fenced for the purchase of the trailer, but for organisations interested to be invited to present to the area committee a business plan on how the events trailer could be deployed. And regarding the last point, we also asked for plans, options for the further development of Agnew Park to include additional youth activities, facilities be brought forward for consideration. I'm quite sure that was my memory, and it is also what the Wigton Area Committee minutes actually say. So there is a slight discrepancy in there. We're not just asking for 54,000 to be spent in the trailer stage. We're actually wanting some business plans.
Okay, has anyone got any other points on the report? Craig?
Thank you, Chair. It's regarding into 5.4 in the list of projects that are identified by the Area Committee. If I recall rightly, during this committee last year, when we were talking about the projects identified for Sederunt and the waterfront there, because of the project and the costing of the projects at the time and the funding available from the capital programme, we had to actually slice some of the budgets on the projects to come within the budget that was available to us. And one in particular that I recall was on the Environment and Access project at the time, and I think we sliced about 75,000 off that particular project. And I'm just wondering that with the slippage that's been identified through the projects as have been going on, and therefore money being made available and these extra projects identified by the committee, and I'm just sort of curious to see as to, with that top slicing, would some of that money not have been better to been reintroduced to that particular project to have fulfilled that to its potential before identifying new projects?
Do you want to comment at that point, Ewan?
I think in general, the range of projects outlined today in 5.4 in the report, plus the previously agreed projects, has a significant amount of what's called environmental improvements around the park, the marina area, and indeed Loch Ryan, in terms of some of the work around gateways, for example. So I don't think we, having looked at what the projects came back from the community consultation, came back from members and other things, I think we're probably delivering to the right level in terms of the environmental improvements. I don't think the programme's been impaired by the change that you're talking about.
Okay, Ronnie?
2 points I'd like to raise. First of all, can I welcome the emergency work to be done in Stanley Lane. That culvert does back up and floods quite a large part of the centre of Annan, which I'm glad so that I'm pleased that's been identified. I've got a sore throat as well. The question I want to ask, Chair, is on page 64, and it's speed limits and traffic calming measures. Now, I know we're in dialogue with Mr Howell and others, but it says here, St John's Road, Annan, it's a possible scheme, it's part of the Annan Gateway from the station. The question I'm asking is, if we agree this today, would that circumvent some of the public consultation or anything like that? Or is it still just a possible scheme?
I'll bring John in at this point.
Sorry, Mr Ogilvie, could you maybe just repeat your question? Sorry.
Thanks, John. It's a simple question, really. It's identified here that St John's Road, Annan, might be a possible scheme for speed reduction because it's on the way to Annan Academy, and it ties in with the Gateway plan. We've also got Elm Road that's an issue as well. The question I'm asking, John, if we agree this today as part of the recommendations, would that circumvent any sort of public consultation?
No, the indication in the paper is just basically a position statement. This is where we've got to with that scheme. It's not any agreement. If we can develop a scheme there, that would, our normal consultation, as you'll be aware, is with the police first of all, and then with local members, and then we broaden it out to a broader community.
Okay, can I bring Jack in?
Thanks, Colin. It's also a question for John. It's the top of page 66, the common causations, the remedial measures for the. We brought this up before, John, but I've actually brought it up at the last police committee about the number of vehicles jumping the lights, not only there, but I think in just about every other set of lights in Dumfries. We were going to look at the timings on those lights in the sands. Has that one been looked at?
As you say, this comes up and I observe it myself. Partly there's a police enforcement issue over this.
Yep.
There is also an issue that the timings are safe and that you might see a vehicle travelling across in front of you, but by the time the light has changed to green for you and you've moved forward to the conflict point, that other vehicle has moved away. So certainly the accidents that are recorded at that AIP location were spread out over quite a wide area, and we certainly didn't identify a cluster of accidents where it was the same thing happening over and over again. We have to accept, though, that the amount of information we have in relation to the accident circumstances is sometimes quite limited, and it's a case of trying to interpret the police records. But I've not taken from those that there is an issue in relation to the traffic signal timing.
Thanks, Colin. Can I
Come back in, Jack.
It's and again, in relation to the traffic lights, with the work that's going to be done, Burn Statue, we've asked this before about the traffic lights at the end of Castle Street. They're not connected to the system at all. And the backup there, especially around peak times, is quite... Anyone that's travelled around there at 5 o'clock at night will know how difficult it is to get onto Buccleuch Street or get away at all. But is there anything to bring that into the scoot system?
I'd have to say my understanding of the scoot system is limited. The advice we have, actually fairly recently, is that when there's a separation between different sets of signals and you've got other junctions in between and you've got other traffic coming and going, that there's little or no benefit in actually joining together different sets of signals. I think the signals are really, the linking is designed with traffic flows in a convoy from one set of signals to the next one. But what I'm advised is that because obviously you can turn off or you could park, you can turn into Irish Street, for example, that the traffic flow doesn't actually work in that manner. But I can certainly ask for that to be reconsidered.
Okay, can I bring Alistair in?
Thanks, Chair. I'm well aware, sir, this is it's a strategic type document, and I don't intend to pour over the entrails of it on a line-by-line basis, but a couple of minor points, if I may. Top of page 63, when we're talking about flood risk management and the Wigton context, Newton Stewart retaining wall project complete. Well, obviously, standing my earlier comments, Chair, depending on the outcome from the consultant's report and the Flood Action Group meeting next Tuesday night, that may have to be revisited, but that obviously will be done as part of an ongoing process. And the second one, sir, is over the next page, talking about car parks, and we're talking about the Riverside car park in Newton Stewart. And again, that's signed off there as a project being completed. Well, I think it's arguable in certain quarters whether or not that's the case. I'm already in correspondence with Mr. Speedy on a constituency basis about that, so that might have to be revisited at some time in the not too distant future either, Chair. Apart from that, as I say, to me, I have no issues with the remainder of the report.
Okay, anyone else? George?
Thanks, Chair. It's just actually on page 61. I've just about lost it again. The A713 Parton Mill programme for January 2014. Where are we with that one? I presume that means the raising of the road to alleviate the flooding problems accentuated by flooding from Loch Ken.
The report was written obviously in December, so it was programmed for works in January starting at that location. I'm not aware that it requires or that it involves a significant raising of the road. I understand it's a surfacing scheme at that location at Parton Mill.
Is it, can it, is it envisaged to actually raise the road to a level where it would never flood, or to a level where vehicles could maybe get through it? Because I think there was about between 4 and 5 feet of water across the road just a couple of weeks ago. I
think it's probably one we'll have to maybe look into and come back to you on that one, George, but I'm sure Stephen will do that. Okay, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just one point of clarification, and the second one's actually a plea. On the page 45, on the street lighting spend to save, and the appendix as well, which is Appendix 8, can somebody please refresh my memory? Have we completed the villages and towns that are in and surround the dark skies? Because I think with that classification, we should be concentrating on doing that. I'm very near sure that those were the ones that we were doing first, but it doesn't actually mention in the report that they've been finished. And the second one is page 44. It's regarding the cycle path projects. I have no problems with the potential bids under Appendix 9, and also the ones that are being progressed that are in Appendix 5. My plea would be that in future, at the minute we have Dunragget Bypass is being built. When that is built, there will be either a path at the side of the road where people can cycle or walk, either beside the road or off the road up the old A75. That will eventually mean that between Glenluce and Stranraer, you can get off the road to cycle or walk, apart from an area of about 1 mile. I would suggest that that's maybe an area that we could look at to actually complete the journey between Glenluce and Stranraer, because also from Stranraer you can go cycle or walk off the side of the road out to Cairnryan, and then further, if you turn left in Stranraer, you can actually go as far out as the Lochans. It's maybe something that we actually need to consider of filling in the missing link off the main E75.
If I could come back, okay, on the LED programme, the Spend to Save programme. Certainly the objective was to target those rural areas in relation to the dark skies, and I'll just get confirmation that there are no further communities that we reckon are in proximity that we haven't programmed. Certainly, I think looking at the programme for 13-14 tends to be in the Wigton area. It's very much the areas around the dark skies, and then it seems to be moving out to more of the coastal areas for the programme for 14-15. But I'll make sure there's nothing has been left out of next year's programme that would be dark skies related. John, can you comment on the cycle scheme?
Yes, there's long-term aspirations for a through route to Stranraer, basically the continuation of the National Cycle Network. That predates my detailed involvement in cycle planning and things like that, but you can certainly check on that provision. But certainly that has always, it seems to have been the long-term aspiration that there is a through route. So if there's a short section that perhaps the council needs to get involved in providing, we can look at that. And as I always say, we're always open to other suggestions for cycle schemes.
Once we've done that, I'm sure Jim will give a commitment to cycle to area committee meetings from Glenluce. Walk, yeah. Okay. Can I bring Craig in and then Patsy?
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's on the Street Light and Spend to Save programme, referring to Appendix 8 in the papers on page 75. Looking at the programme outlined for 13-14 and the programme plan for 14-15, the totals here of the bulbs changed is, it's in the region of just over the 3,000 on each of the years that we have listed there. And I'm just wondering, is that the sort of perceived limit of the units that can be changed within the financial year? Because obviously throughout the region there's going to be an awful lot more than that to go to complete the whole of the region in the whole programme. And just on the back of that, I'm slightly disappointed to see that in Annandale and Eskdale for 14-15 we only have one town that will have the bulbs changed into the new LED bulbs for the Spend to Save.
Could just come back on the programme. The idea when we set it up was it was an 8-year programme, and that over a period of 8 years we would draw down the funding, the capital funding. And there was a number of reasons for doing that. And it could have been done, possibly in one go over 2 years, or resources permitting. And that's something that could have been programmed or considered. But the idea of a kind of more phased implementation was to try and see what the benefits were in terms of energy reduction in some of the units that we were putting in, so that part of the way through the project we could convince ourselves that we were heading in the right direction with the investment and that we were going to realise the savings both in the carbon reduction for the carbon management plan too, and also the savings in terms of the energy. So the idea was not to change everything at the same time. The other issue with taking all of the lamps and changing them over a 1 or 2 year period, whatever the kind of residual or the lifespan of these units are, we would then face ourselves maybe in 30 years' time with a lot of units coming due for renewal. And the idea with the kind of phased implementation was to a certain extent to try and stagger that so that we have the opportunity in the refresh in whatever time period that is required for the LED units and the dimmable lights, that we can deal with that within a normal refurbishment program at that time. In terms of the locations, very much left to decisions by our kind of engineering design colleagues who run the street lighting service in terms of the best locations, but what for refurbishment in any 1 year. But what really has driven them in their prioritisation has been to hit the rural locations first and the kind of far out places, because the LED installation reduces the maintenance callback times to these units and gives us cost savings as part of the programme in terms of the exercise to feed through. So a lot of the rural areas have been hit first, and it's that kind of 3,000 units a year over the 8 year period. So it gives us a bit of fluctuation in terms of there seems to be quite a lot done in the Stewartry area this year, and we're seeing probably a bit more done in terms of the Wigton area in terms of numbers. And then 3 locations in this Dale, obviously kind of high kind of urban populations, so they take about a third of the units. So that's the kind of idea in terms of developing the programme, that it's the rural areas that we're hitting first.
Okay, Patsy.
Thank you. It's just to do with the dark skies. I'm quite surprised to see Gatehouse not featuring. It's nearly been done. I don't think so, though. And because it is very close, and I'd have thought it would have been there certainly for next year. And also, Kakubri has partially been done. Therefore, I'd kind of hoped it would be finished. But I'm quite surprised to see no sign. They've done the bridge and they've done 1 or 2 areas of Kakubri. I know that, but not the whole town. And I just wonder if it's just because you've got a set number you're going to do every year and you're not going to do any more. But it was just really more to do with Gatehouse, actually, in the dark skies.
What we're not showing is the 12-13 programme, because we started, so it might be that we picked up Gatehouse there. But when I do the check on the dark skies proximity, I'll ask for a check on Gatehouse as well.
I suppose the kind of comments we're getting just now is the council being a victim of its own success. There's been nothing but praise for these lights right across the region, and I fear that if we're going to roll out this over 8 years, there's going to be a increasing number of communities wanting their street lights changed sooner rather than later. But I think the council have got to be commended on how the rollout's gone. As I say, that there's been very, very few adverse comments and nothing but praise. The only adverse comments are the likes of Castle Douglas. They want it done sooner rather than later, and I think that'll be the case over the next few years.
Okay, members, do we have any final questions, or we go to the recommendations? Okay, are we happy to note 2.1, 2.2, okay, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5? Okay, in relation to 2.6, I think we've got a couple of slight amendments to reflect what was raised. Jim, do you want to?
Yeah, I can actually repeat what the decision was, or I can hand it over for you to read yourself.
Would that deliberately, Jim, see if I can lose my voice here?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't actually looking at yourself.
No, we've got to hear what was actually agreed at the area committee was in relation to the £54,000 for the trailer. The minute says £54,000 to be ring fenced for the purchase of an events trailer, but that the organisations interested be invited to present to the area committee during the area committee community meeting a business plan and how this event trailer could be developed. So if that was what was agreed at the area committee, then I think that's what we should reflect in this moment, in this one here. And finally, in relation to 2.7, the actual minute of the area committee said that plans options for the further development of Agnew Park, including additional youth activity facilities, be brought forward for our consideration. So again, if we can amend that to reflect what was agreed at the committee, I think members will be happy with that. Okay, so that's 2.6 and 2.7 agreed. Are we happy to note 2.8, 2.9, 2.10, 2.11, 2.12, 2.13 and 2.14? And I'm also conscious there were a number of issues raised around the flooding. I'm maybe bring clear in at this point, but I think the main aim was that the points that were raised will be taken forward by Alistair to the recovery group. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to pick up, Claire.
That's correct, Chairman. Just the issues that were raised would be discussed at the next meeting of the recovery team.
Okay, members happy with that? Okay. Okay, can we move to item number 9 then? Okay, item 9's an opportunity for members to scrutinise the draft budget from the administration in relation to the areas covered by this committee. There are around 7 savings options that impact on the budget of this department, and also one of the major policy development projects around employability is obviously relevant to this department as well. I suppose we can take them into 2 groups. We'll maybe take the savings measures first and see if members have got any questions around the savings options. Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. The question I would have, sir, is in relation to this, the cutting back, and no pun intended, obviously, of sort of maintenance in certain categories of burial grounds. Let me make it clear, sir, that I have no problems with the principle of that, but I think it will be absolutely imperative, given the sensitivity of the service, Chair, that we manage this properly and ensure, in fact, that communities, where necessary, are consulted with and notified of what's being proposed to the fullest possible extent. For instance, I think there will be certain cemeteries, Chair, which will be located in particular locations and communities and villages, etc., where we might have to look, in fact, at doing somewhat more than, depending on circumstances, doing somewhat more than the proposed 3 cuts per annum. So, as I say, I would welcome a response, with your leave, to my suggestion that we manage this to the greatest extent possible, Chair.
I think it's a valid point. I think if you look at the template on 29, the overall saving itself is £260,000, but when we developed this option, what we built in was a £60,000 flexibility. And that effectively will go to the DG First Management Committee, and their role will be basically to scrutinise any of the proposals that come forward, either in relation to burial grounds or the wider maintenance savings option, and they have that flexibility. So if they do require in certain areas further cuts over and above the 3, then they have the flexibility and the funds, most importantly, to make sure that happens. I think there's a really important role there for the DG First Management Committee to make sure that this is implemented in a sensible and sensitive way, and we have built into the budget some flexibility to ensure that does happen. And obviously we'll monitor that on a regular basis should that savings option be taken forward.
That's very helpful, not to say reassuring, Chair. Thank you.
Can I bring Ian in at this point?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, you covered the first point. I think the other point to make in this template is that the Council basically identified about 1,200 areas of ground that they're responsible for maintaining, and this is part of this option. It's not just about burial grounds. There are a number of areas that they maintain that really are no practical use to the Council, and in order to the flexibility we've inbuilt there is to also allow for us to do the work to identify pieces of land or ground which are no real earthly use to the Council, and find a way of selling or offloading to some extent, or identifying where in fact actually we really oughtn't to be cutting them at all.
Does any other members have any questions on the savings options? You got your hand up, Jack, or no, I'm scratching your ear, sorry. Okay, any other questions on the savings options? Okay, no. Do you have any sorry, Craig, yep.
Chair, thank you. Just a quick one. It's on these staff and associated costs template there. And it was just a question. Obviously, it states in the template there about the staff losses, etc., through the voluntary early retirement. And it says it's balanced across the departments. I just wondered if the staff reductions in that case are also balanced across the areas.
In terms of geographical areas?
Yes, area committee areas, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly this came through the individual service reviews. I don't think we went into any detail in the service review in terms of geography. I don't know if anybody's actually done that work within the department. I don't think so.
Chair, if I could help, yes, it is balanced. When we look at our operations, they obviously have to be adequate and fit for purpose at all locations. And although we basically work Dumfries and Stranraer, it is a balanced approach.
Okay, Ian, do you want to come in?
It's just to say that it's actually included in there, the statement on details of staffing implications and how it will be managed. In the middle of page 91, it does actually confirm that. And if I recall, that was something we actually did clarify early on in the budget process.
Thanks for that, Ian. Okay, any other questions on the savings? Okay, if we turn to the policy development option and employability, do members have any questions on that? All happy? Okay, quite pleased at that response. Thank you very much indeed. Can we turn to the recommendations? Okay, and I think we've scrutinised to an extent the options. Obviously, members are quite happy with these options going forward. Okay, thanks very much. Can we turn to item number 10? Okay, this item is an update on the development of the forestry and woodland strategy. Obviously, the consultation responses are contained in the appendices and the final or the draft strategy documents there for members to scrutinise and give their views on. Could I ask the Director if there's anything to add to the report itself?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open it up to members? Alistair?
Well, the question I would have for Mr. Rogers, sir, is that there's been a lot of what to me is worthwhile quality comments made. I accept that some of them are more perhaps about the impact and potentially adverse impact, Chair, of afforestation on other forms of activity, economically important forms of activity in Western Dumfries and Galloway. For instance, from Galloway Fisheries Trust, River Cree District Salmon Fishery Board, the Bladnoch District Fishery Board, etc., and also the Southern Upland Partnership. And while I accept, Chair, that Mr. Rogers has taken into account in the responses certain of these comments, I also feel that in a number of cases that we have taken the attitude that we have not we have given some of these short shrift. What would his response be to that comment, so that we have maybe been not quite as receptive as we could have been in taking some of these comments on board and endeavouring to incorporate them into the draft document? I'd be interested in that, Chair. Would you?
Okay, thanks, Alistair. I'll bring Andrew in. He's obviously done the work around this to answer your point.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly the sort of general comments that were received, there are a number of organisations that support the strategy. There are others that, as you say, have detailed comments. I think probably the key thing here is that this is a strategic document, and possibly some of the comments are actually going into too fine a level of detail for a strategic document. I mean, clearly, in terms of individual proposals, there is a process where additional comments can be made on those proposals, where some of these more detailed elements can be used to respond to specific proposals. So that's my initial response to that.
come back in, Alistair.
Thanks very much, sir. Grateful to you. So in other words, what we're really saying is that by virtue of the fact that they will not be incorporated into high-level strategic document does not mean to say that they will be lost sight of, Chair, and that they will be developed in the appropriate fashion as part of the ongoing process. If that is the response to the question I've raised, I'm well satisfied with that, Chair.
That was effectively what Andrew was saying. Yep.
I think the key point is, yeah, more detail can be considered when a detailed proposal is brought forward. I mean, this is a high-level strategy, and it's about getting the right balance between the detail and the strategy and keeping it strategic.
Happy with that, Alistair?
Yes, indeed, sir. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions on the strategy document? No. Okay, can I first of all thank Andrew and the team for the work they've done around this, and can we turn to the recommendations? Okay, I think we've considered the comments at 2.1. Are we happy with the recommendation at 2.2? Sorry, Alistair, yeah.
Forgive me if I'm coming across as being more pedantic than I normally am, but I'm never quite sure, Chair, of the issue of what you mean by delegated authority. I mean, I'm old-fashioned enough, to prefer the use of the term remit, and it's either a remit with powers, Chair, or it's a remit, to sort of carry out and to report back. What are we talking about here, sir, from the point of view of my clarity?
It's really to take the changes that are referred to in the document and actually make those changes to the consultative draft that was published and finalise that document.
In other words, Chair, it's a remit with powers, and I have no problems with that. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so we're remitting it to the Head of Plan and Regulatory Services, yeah. Okay, 2.3. Okay, happy that we've considered that appropriately, yeah. Okay, 2.4, we're happy to agree that. Okay, and we're happy to agree 2.5. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, item number 12 is the Dumfries and Galloway Dumfries Conservation Area Character Appraisal. Similar to the previous report, we're asked to consider the comments in the public consultation and effectively to approve the final document. Can I ask the Director if there's anything to add to the report, first of all?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and can I ask if any members have got any questions? Apart from the fact that we'll probably remit rather than delegate to the Head of Planning. Okay, no questions on that. I think generally I would certainly like to thank, given the fact that this impacts significantly my own ward, thank the team for the work they've done on this. I think this is a report that's actually been very warmly welcomed by the local community. There's not a huge number of responses in the consultation, and I think that reflects more the fact that the department took on board a lot of the feedback they had at an early stage when this conservation area appraisal was actually being developed. So I think it's a first-class piece of work, and I'm looking forward to seeing it implemented as we go forward in relation to planning in Dumfries Town Centre, and certainly preserving some of the outstanding character that we have in the town centre. So thanks very much for all the work that's gone into that document, and looking forward to seeing its implementation. Okay, members, can we turn to the recommendations? Okay, 2.1, we've considered the comments. 2.2, we're happy to remit to the Head of Planning. 2.3, happy to note. Yeah. Okay, and with powers. And 2.4, are we happy to approve the final document? Yeah. Okay, thanks very much, folks. Okay, can we turn to item 13? This is a further consultation by the Scottish Government on their draft planning policy, and in particular, it's a specific consultation on effectively adding the principle of sustainable economic growth and sustainable development to planning policy. So that the reports there, including the draft of the council suggested response to that. Can I ask if there's anything to add to the report, Director?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, can I open it up to members? Take it from that we're happy with the draft response from the department, which is, no, I think I have to say I agree entirely with the contents of the response, and I think it's a perfectly sensible and reasonable response to the question. Quite a limited consultation. Okay, so effectively, in turning to the recommendations, members are in agreement with the draft response that's already been submitted. There's nothing to add to that individual response, no. Okay, happy with that? Okay, thanks very much. Okay, can we turn to item number 14, which is the Dumfries and Galloway Renewable Energy Action Plan. I think this is it's a good piece of work. I think it reflects a view that certainly comes across to a large extent in the community, that we do have a major impact in the area of renewable energy, but we don't necessarily receive all the benefits from it, certainly from a business point of view and certainly from a jobs point of view. And I think a key part of this document is to try to turn that around. Can I ask if the Director's got anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, can I open it up to any members' questions?
Yeah, me, Chair. Yeah. It's on the employability. I'm not sure what the exact figure is, but is there not a course run at the Crichton campus for renewable energy? You know, for apprenticeships and that? Or am I wrong?
Chris, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there is a course that's run at the Crichton campus, at the college. What this is looking to do, particularly in employment and skills and development, is also look at supply chain opportunities where there is needed to be some upskilling for the businesses, and particularly the small SMEs in terms of upskilling, in terms of opportunities from the sector.
Okay. Do you want to come back in, Ronnie?
Yeah, it's not within the report, but the figures for Dumfries and Galloway, you know, how many folk go through that course and how many of them are employed through this sector. I know you're talking about the wider supply chain, but for renewables, I mean, I see a lot in the national press about an increasing in jobs in that area. I just wonder how effective, how we're getting our share of it in Dumfries and Galloway.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, there was just something in the BBC News today about hiring of staff in terms of across the whole of Scotland. It's increasing year on year. From Dumfries and Galloway, the idea from this, and we can certainly come back if you want specific figures from individuals who go through the course and who then get full-time jobs from that, we can get that information. But this is also about widening the whole thing through the renewables partnership to offer more opportunities in jobs.
Certainly. Want to come back in again, Ronnie? Sorry.
I'm just trying to get a handle of how effective we are in getting employment out of this new brave world. So any further information would be great, because I don't know at this moment in time how many people. We've got a college running a course, and we've got young people going through it. I assume it's young people, and but we don't know how successful they are and how that would then impact on the supply chain. You know, if there's companies saying, well, if you put him through that particular course, the fabrication or whatever it is, if you're talking about building, but there's not many wind turbines built on mainland Scotland now. So I'm just trying to get a handle on how what we're actually asking the SMEs to engage in if we're not fabricating wind turbines or making the solar panels, whatever. Just what it is, what part of the supply chain we're going to influence.
Some of the significant opportunities going forward from the supply chain are going to be on maintenance. But if I could just say that it's not just about wind turbines and the development of wind turbines, it's about the whole of the renewable sector. So there's opportunities from other areas of the supply chain as well as turbines. So we're looking for the renewables partnership to be able to support employment opportunities and skills and development training across the whole of the renewable sector. And I think, if I may, Chair, it's quite important to actually state that it is across the whole of the sector that opportunities will develop.
Finlay, and then Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. I know we've moved item 10 to the end, but it might have tied in with this. I'm somewhat disappointed there's no mention of anaerobic digesters and the power that can be produced from those, and also no mention of the power that we already generate from the landfill sites. I know that's not going to be there in the long term, but certainly I would have thought there'd been some consideration given to anaerobic digesters.
That would come under the microgeneration part of the renewables. So we would look at working with Napier University. They've got a project at the moment looking at anaerobic digestion and going into businesses and supporting them doing that. So it all comes in the micro generation rather than a specific category.
If I may just add, and before I do that, my apologies, I should have introduced my colleague Shelley Bell, who actually, I think some can see just behind. Shelley is actually from my team who sort of takes forward the renewables partnership from our team. Some of the microgeneration and the SMEs that Shelley's just indicated will come from a number of sectors. The whole idea of this is that we get as many of the key stakeholders, such as the Federation of Small Businesses, the Chambers of Commerce across the region, who will have some of these businesses as members to be able to take it forward in terms of development and support as well.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. Can I say, first of all, that I'm delighted to hear Chris stress the point that, this is about the renewable energy sector as a whole. I think, too often in a Dumfries and Galloway context, we've equated wind turbines with the renewable energy sector as a whole. Maybe no surprising, standing what's happened over the last several years. But, going to the glossy report, sir, and to page 219, looking at my annotations, and I'll leave out the expletives, but if you talking about the bullet points, existing ports, fabrication centres, new marine clusters, innovation, research and development, and manufacturing and supply chains. And as far as I'm concerned, there's not a mention there, Chair, of Dumfries and Galloway. And when you go over the page to page 220, only one location in Dumfries and Galloway is mentioned in any policy/strategy documents as a key location. Stranraer is a potential location for fabrication supply base. Well, that, to the best of my knowledge and belief, has never in fact been developed or taken forward, albeit I would be delighted to be proven wrong in that regard. And finally, Chair, it says, therefore, at national level, the region does not appear to be included at the top table in terms of policy priority. As far as I'm concerned, sir, that's very much of an understatement. And I think it's absolutely imperative, even at this stage in the process, for this council to do whatever it has to do to try to shoulder its way into the top table. Because, particularly from the point of view of development of marine renewables, which is, as I understand it, Chair, is at a comparatively early stage. Here's a window of opportunity, I would suggest. This is we're consistently told, and regrettably it's true, that this is a low-wage economy with limited job prospects, particularly at the top end of the job market. And it seems to me, Chair, that on that basis we've got to endeavour to do everything that we can to get potentialities like this exploited and developed to the fullest. And I would hope, in fact, that arising from our consideration of this today, that we take up a position statement in that fashion and try to work matters forward on that basis. Forgive the rant, Chair. Thank you.
No, I think it's a very valid and well-made point, Alistair. I think that's the aim of the whole exercise today and the whole document, is to try to make sure the region does benefit from this particular industry. Excuse me. Can I bring Ian in?
Thanks, Chair. Just following on from what Alistair said, I had a conversation some time ago with a representative of Scottish Power Renewables at the time when they were bringing turbines in from outside the country. It's a well-known fact. We don't manufacture our own. They were coming in by sea through the Port of Ayr to be moved down to a site in Dumfries and Galloway. And his question was, why can't we bring them in through Loch Ryan and give Loch Ryan the benefit of the business? At the time, he stated that the Port of Ayr was making a third of its revenue from at that particular point from bringing turbines through by cargo ship. And why then have to truck them all the way down here when there was an opportunity? And I even went as far as to speak to a senior representative of Sederunt. Would you be interested if cargo ships could come in through Loch Ryan? And their answer was positive. So my first question is, what are we doing about making some kind of attempt to get that kind of business in, as well as the sort of the supply issue? Why are we not shipping them in through there? The second thing is completely unrelated. It's on the issue of biomass. It's well documented, the problems we've had with the ones that we have installed. Biomass still appears on our list of renewables. What are we doing about having in-house expertise? What are we doing about making sure that what we actually put in is going to function and work. And what are we doing about ensuring that there's an adequate supply issue? There was a singular lack of expertise in this council when we put these ones in. There's certainly one I know in my ward, but I think it's a fundamental issue which needs to be addressed before we roll these out any further. Hugely expensive, probably in their relative infancy, and my knowledge, from what I gather from my own research, is that they are perfectly adequate in small residential units. They're questionable in commercial.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the opportunities to bring turbines into the region, the remit of the Dumfries and Galloway Renewable Energy Partnership, which is a relatively new organisation, is to look at all aspects of opportunities for the sector, including infrastructure, and that will be taken forward as part of this, along with other parts of economic development in terms of the strategic projects team. But I think it's key to say that this is a new emerging and developing partnership which will be looking at every opportunity that we can from renewables to make Dumfries and Galloway, I think, punch above its weight, for want of a better word, in terms of opportunities that we can take forward, both business, employment, and also bringing work into the region itself. In terms of the biomass, I take on board your point. They are represented on the partnership, so that will be part of the remit and how the actual partnership develops and the projects that they look at from there, along with other members of the team who look at forestry, fuel, and the availability of wood. So we are trying to join up the whole of the partnership to look at all opportunities that there may be and some specific areas within that.
Okay, can I bring Director at this point?
With regard to biomass and our own performance with that technology, my understanding is there is a report to come back to members to review our current installations and their performance. As far as our sustainable development is concerned and our renewable energy plans for the future, we still feel that biomass is a key technology to support and follow. So we are doing additional work on that, and we'll keep members advised.
Okay, Finlay.
Thanks. Just an opportunity to come back in. I understand what you're saying about microgeneration, but the sort of anaerobic digesters I'm talking about, I don't think fall into that category. There's commercial anaerobic digesters working in council areas down south that are producing between 2 and 4 megawatts. I just don't understand why there's no mention of anaerobic digesters in here at all that I can see. We're talking about something on a far bigger scale than household or even agricultural holding anaerobic digesters. I'm concerned because this plan's obviously going to be in place, or the vision's going to be in place for some time, and I think with the new zero waste and whatever that we're committed to, that it's something it's key to what we're trying to do in Dumfries and Galloway, and I don't think microgeneration actually is going to touch it.
Take on board your comments, Councillor Carson, and we will look at that and look to include it if it's appropriate. Thank you.
Chair, if I could just add and assist Councillor Carson, as far as anaerobic digestion is concerned with zero waste, we will be using a unit in Ayrshire for our food waste. It's not any long-term contract that we're setting up. At the moment, we don't have any facility in Dumfries and Galloway to use, but we have been approached through the waste team by a number of organisations looking at what potential there is for the private development of such a digester that the council could use. So it is an ongoing issue for us, and we'll keep you advised about that.
Okay, do we have any final questions? Okay, can we turn to the recommendations? Sorry, Ronnie.
It's just on page 201. It gives you the sort of makeup on the previous page of the steering group. Then it goes on to say Dumfries and Galloway will provide secretariat function for the group. I mean, is our scrutiny just looking at the plans, or do we have? Is it classed an outside body that maybe a council elected member would be on that, or are we just basically facilitating the whole thing and just get regular reports. I just wondered about the mechanism of how we keep an eye on this.
Thank you, Chair. Key to the development of this was utilising the same development framework that we did for the regional tourism strategy, which is that it has to be taken forward by the key partners and the stakeholders in the sector, rather than driven by the council. If we don't get the stakeholders and the businesses and the Federation of Small Businesses and those organisations to actually drive it forward, then there is a danger that we don't move it forward. So in terms of that, one of the things that we've detailed here is that there will be an action plan that is developed from this, which is, again, the same model that we use for the regional tourism strategy. So the action plan will have outputs to it that we then will independently monitor in the same way as we do for the regional tourism strategy, so that it can be seen that the actual partnership is moving forward in achieving outputs. But it is key that it's driven by the sector as opposed to the council.
So we would receive 6 monthly reports or progress reports as and when required?
What we would look to do, Councillor Ogilvie, is do the reports in line with the economic development reports that we do as part of our business plan.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. I really am obliged to Councillor Ogilvie for bringing this point up, and I say it with the greatest deference to Chris. I think that, you know, that's just a wee, that dichotomy that she's outlined is just a wee bit too simplistic. I think at the end of the day that, you know, we've got to be in there to the fullest possible extent, and, you know, given that, you know, our role and remit and functions are as Economic Development Authority for Dumfries and Galloway, and I going back, if I understood, you know, what Ronnie was inferring correctly, I think there should be more elected member involvement in this, not trying to take it over. You know, and when I used the phraseology earlier about shouldering our way to the top table, I wasn't talking about the council, but I was talking about the council, you know, being part of that process and assisting these people in doing so. We're in a competitive world, you know, and at the end of the day, if we really don't get stuck in and try to get the maximum amount of benefit from this extremely important and forward-looking industry conferred upon Dumfries and Galloway, nobody else is going to do it for us, Chair. And to that extent, if Ronnie wants to suggest that we have some form of elected member involvement in the monitoring and the driving forward of this action plan, I would be totally supportive of his comments and his proposals.
Sure what you mean from a practical point of view. Obviously what will happen is that the report will come back as part of the regular business plan reports to the committee. So is there something particular that you're suggesting over and above that? Obviously the sort of day-to-day partnership, if you like, will be run obviously by officers in partnership with the various organisations listed in the back of the document, but I'm just trying to think from a practical point of view what we're actually suggesting.
I hesitate. I don't like the idea of sort of trying to make policy in the hoof. That's no good practice. You wouldn't allow me to do it anyway. But the point I'm making is that, you know, I think we should be looking for a more active role in the process as an authority. And within that, I think there's probably also the opportunities that we have to have a more active elected member role in taking forward the process as well. It's all very well, you know, to sit here and sort of scrutinise, as it were, you know, the basis of 6 monthly reports. I think if we're being honest in this chamber, Chair, we'd all accept that we've still a fair ways to go to get scrutiny and performance management inculcated into the very core of the authority. And as I say, I'm not articulating it very well, but at the end of the day, I think I understand what Ronnie was alluding to, and if my understanding is correct, I think he's in the right lines, and I would like to, you know, to place on record my support of that. Maybe we should be looking at again on the back of today's decision as to how we can in fact strengthen our involvement and input, Chair. I'm trying to be helpful, not...
No, I take up what you're saying, and I agree entirely what you're saying. I'm just trying to think through how we could do that in a practical. Maybe that's something we could bring back at a future meeting, ideas and suggestions how we could do that from a practical point of view. If members agree, the action plan today. Sorry, an energy champion, renewable energy champion, volunteering, Ronnie. I think take on board that the comments and the importance of this issue, and obviously look at ways in which we can strengthen member involvement in that process in the future. Okay, Ian.
Just quickly, I'm grateful for this document. It's a good piece of work. Just one comment. We got a really good glossy document here, and then it's replicated in black and white within the body of the report. Can we stop wasting paper like that?
Ian's budget hat coming on there. Save some money. Okay, well, I think suggestion is we should all bring our laptops to the meeting, then we can all do without paper and do it online. Finlay.
I may be mistaken. I thought we had an equivalent of an energy champion. That was our previous chair of this committee. Took that role and had his. They had the cross-nation liaison group with another organisation. I thought we actually did have a energy champion as such, and there was a paper that came out that was potentially looking at an energy champion for the different areas. Is that just a figment of my imagination, or was something done previously?
I've got an interesting imagination if it is, Finlay. I suspect you're probably correct, actually, and I think we should look into that and bring details back as to what was agreed previously. Yeah. Okay, can we turn to the recommendations? Okay, members, are you happy to note 2.1? Okay, are we happy to agree the action plan? Okay, we're happy to note that the formal launch will take place in February 2014. Okay, and 2.4, we're happy to note that progress will be reported in the action plan, etc. And I think maybe add a final recommendation to bring forward details of strengthening member involvement and also on the back of previous work that's done on the role of an energy champion. Okay. Okay, can I thank Chris and Shirley for the answering the questions from members. Okay, can we turn to item number 15? Okay, members, this is a report that's a further consultation by the Scottish Government in relation to what they describe as good practice principles for community benefits from onshore renewable energy development. You should have been handed an amendment to the actual report at paragraph 3.5. Have members received copies of that? Okay. Quite a major subtle difference, I think. I'll ask the director to outline that when he makes any comments on the back of the report.
My apologies, I don't have the mic on. That's the change.
Could I ask, did everybody hear that clarification? Yeah. Okay. Might just maybe get Alistair, sorry, to repeat that,
Okay.
just to put that on record. Yeah.
Okay, the change is, ladies and gentlemen, at 3.5 in the report on page 290, it states that the Council was able to enforce the policy through the use of Section 75 agreements. The correction is that the Council was able to seek to secure the policy through the use of Section 75 agreements. That's what's included in the amendment that we've given you. The exact words are that legal advice was sought and it was clarified at the time that the Council was able to secure the payment of community payments agreed with developers through the use of Section 75 agreements. And that's reflected in the appendix where we have the terminology as mentioned above. DGC do have a policy, but this is to secure community benefits rather than enforce.
Okay, I'll open it up to members. Do you want to bring Jim in first of all?
Yeah, thanks. I I think at this point we should maybe remember that the comments that are being made in this draft response are in regards to the council policy as it stands at the minute. I don't think anybody in here will be under any illusion about my views on the current council policy. However, that is council policy. I would dearly love to make comments regarding the replies. However, we have a council policy, and in my view, what is in the response actually agrees with council policy as it stands at the minute. If we do not agree with the policy, that is for another time and another place.
Thanks, Jim. Could I bring George in first of all?
It's just Chair, you know, the 3.5, slightly confusing to me actually, because I mean, I've sat in this chamber and I've sat in our own room, and whether my recollection is wrong, I'm not saying my recollections are always right, but whether my recollection is wrong or not, my recollection is that this was enforceable. That's my recollection. I'm not making any other comment other than that. And I find it just a wee bit strange that suddenly, I don't remember the word secure and enforce being used before. Is it in the actual policy? Secure. Is it in the policy? But I find it strange, the 3.5.
Thank you, Chair. The wording secure is in the policy, Councillor.
Certainly for the benefit of today, as Alistair says, if you look at page 294, we're quite clear that in paragraph 5 that our policy is to secure and not to enforce. It's certainly reflected in the draft submission here. Can I bring Jim in now?
Thanks, Chair. Just an observation. Where did we have an undertaking to the public to use plain English, and this report amendment isn't really plain English. Steve Rogers, when he replied to members, and George should have got a copy of that, when the question was asked, can we legally enforce this, he had the good grace to put in short, no. And then he went on to explain exactly what council's policy is. And the second part of this paragraph just rehearses council policy, and we all know that. But we should be using plain English. The question was, can we enforce it? And the answer has always been no. But we have a council policy which says we should try, seek, I think it's the word, seek to ensure a agreement and a specific figure. But we should also be using plain English in these documents and not try and confuse members.
Okay, Jeff.
It's just when the director read out the wording in 3.5, he said seek to secure. That's different from securing. To seek is to attempt to secure. To secure is totally different. We have secured it. So I'm not quite sure whether we are seeking to secure or we will secure.
I think that the wording is what's on the paper, is what the report will be amended to reflect, basically.
My apologies if I confused things. Sorry.
Okay, can I bring Graham in?
Well, my understanding is if we seek to secure something, we seek to obtain or make sure about something. So, you know, we can play with words all day. The spirit and the feeling of this council is to derive wind farm benefit and to attach it to planning applications. But we've got an easy answer to all this. We just don't approve any until we get clear clarification. And that's maybe not the darkest suggestion that was made in this chamber today.
Okay, it's yeah, I mean, if you want to take some further legal advice on that one, I'm sure that will be slightly more clear. Can I bring Alistair in at this point?
Thanks, Chair. I must confess, sir, I have concerns about, from a process primarily point of view, about the proposed production of this good practice principles document. I mean, we've already got a consultative document out, Chair, on which Scottish Government are consulting, and you know, my understanding is that once that consultative process has been completed, that will have the status of supplementary planning guidance that's mentioned in the report. And yet, almost out of the blue, we're you know, the self-same, you know, government are suggesting, in fact, are producing a a good practice principles document, which the status of which, as far as I'm concerned, at this stage is by no means clear. Not only that, it doesn't seem to lie particularly well with the earlier consultative document and about whose status we've already been informed, i.e. it will assume the status of supplementary planning guidance. And to me, this is it's not only an unsatisfactory, it's a bizarre way of doing business. And I would like to think that, we make that point clear in our response. Obviously, Chair, we'll need to revisit matters once we've got a finalised document. But in the meantime, I don't think it would do any harm to pick up the point that's been made correctly, in my view, in the report and to hammer it in our reply. And, because to use a colloquialism, that to me is the sort of sensible way, in my opinion, to be doing business.
Okay, thanks. I think that's a valid point, actually. Do we know, in terms of the planning process, what the actual other than sort of guidance is? This is not effectively enforceable. If this document goes through, it's not something we obviously have to consider as a local authority. But is it purely guidance? It's not something that's absolutely enforceable. Is that the case?
We understand, Chair, that it's guidance. That's why in our response in number 3, we've clearly asked for clarity on that, because as Councillor Geddes quite rightly says, it seems to go against the consultation that we've got in place from the Scottish Government. And obviously we discussed this with the head of planning, with Steve, and that's one of the key questions that we seek clarity on, because one is guidelines, one is going to be policy. And we're asking for clear response from the Scottish Government on that point.
Are you happy with what's in paragraph 3? And that makes that very
clear? Yes, sir. Thanks.
Okay, can I bring Craig in and then Finlay?
Thank you, Chair. Just on similar responses, I don't have an issue with the response that we as a council are putting in towards this document. I do have the issue with the document itself, and again, it's been mentioned. It really contradicts the SPP and what is in there. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that government should come out with a good practice document like this that clearly contravenes the SPP that has been consulted on it and looking to bring forward as policy. And it is noted in here by our authority that we question that, and we're asking for clarification, and quite rightly so. This guidance, to me, reading through it, and I appreciate it, good practice principles and guidance, but this will be used by the wind farm developers. They will always refer back to this on applications that they put forward in the future. And it puts the onus on the developer to decide on the community benefits within the region. Even as far as it states in this guidance, as deciding the geographical area affected by the wind farm. That is left, according to the government's guidance, to the developer. That is just not right. We as an authority, we are the ones that should decide what area that affects within our own region. And I think it's just absolutely ridiculous that they should come out with a document like this. And it's just Scottish Government playing into the hands of wind farm developers.
Well made point. Finlay?
This whole thing just worries me intensely. We've tried to make things nice and clear for the communities, because they're put in a position where not only are they dealing with planning applications, but they're also having to deal with wind farm developers, some who have the best interests of the communities at heart, and some who certainly don't have. All we've done as a council over the last few years is complicated that by sending out wrong messages. We've got a paragraph 3.5 that we're struggling to get our heads around. What we need is something that's black and white, and that's certainly not what we've got at the moment. We've got communities wondering whether the council can legally enforce a Section 75 and whether they should go down that route. And at the same time, we've got some wind farm developers saying that is not the case. There's just a lot of confusion, and all that's going to happen if we don't get this sorted out quickly and have a black and white guidance on what they need, or not even guidance. We need to have a strict policy on how the council deals with this. We're going to lose out on funding, and the whole point of the council being involved in this is to ensure the maximum amount of community benefit comes to the communities. That's why we're involved in here, not to grab the money or whatever, but to make sure Dumfries and Galloway as a whole and the communities within that get the money that they're due. And the longer this goes on, the more confusion there is and the more money we're going to lose out on.
Any other points? Okay, members, can we turn to the
Just a
Jim,
brief
yeah.
point with your indulgence, Chair. I think we've all forgotten, currently it's described as voluntary contributions, and until that changes, we cannot decide what happens. We can negotiate, and our staff do that well, but it's a voluntary contribution, and these are guidelines. And how that's unravelled, I don't know, but that's the position we are in, whether we like it or not.
Say we're not here to debate our current policy, we're here obviously to discuss our response to the Scottish Government's draft consultation. So can we turn to the recommendation? First of all, we're happy to note the Scottish Government's draft Good Practice Principles document. Noted, okay. We're happy to note 2.2. Yeah, okay. Sorry, Alistair, yeah.
Forgive me, sir. Would it not be possible to insert there our views that were disconcerted, that, you know, in noting it, that the Scottish Government have seen fit to introduce this into the game at this stage? I mean, my understanding was that that's essentially the feeling of colleagues, and certainly my own feeling, Chair. Again, forgive me, I'm not trying to spring anything on you. Let me make that abundantly clear. But as I say, it seems to me that might better capture the mood of the committee, Chair. Note with concern or whatever.
Okay, so are you looking to amend 2.1 as well as noting the document? You have any words you want to add to that, or?
I would be tempted, sir, to say that, you know, this committee notes with concern the Scottish Government's draft Good Practice Principles document having been brought forward at this stage in the process, given the existence of another consultative document. I don't want to write a book on it, Chair. Let me make that clear. But, you know, I'm suggesting that if we might wish to consider amplifying that a wee bit to make that clear, sir.
Okay. Are members happy to add that change in? Yeah. Does that reflect the? Yeah. Chris, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. If members wishes to, we would certainly add the recommendations from this committee into the preamble into our response, so that the Scottish Government can actually see the comments that came from elected members.
Amended 2.1. That's helpful. Okay, 2.2. 2.3, are we happy to agree the response? Yep. Okay, and 2.4. Okay, thank you very much. Chris, sorry.
My apologies. Again, I've singularly failed to introduce my other colleague, which is totally remiss of me, which is McNab Laurie, who's our our Developer Contributions Officer. So my apologies again, singularly failed.
Thanks very much, Chris. Okay then, folks, can we turn to item number 16, which is the proposals for a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit order in Kirkbean. Can I ask the Director if he's got anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I'm happy to open it up now to members. Ronnie and then Patsy.
It's just an observation. Most of the local members are sort of putting a forward an alternative suggestion, and I don't know if Councillor Blake was going to speak today or not, but just wondering what status the local members have as part of the consultation. You know, if the forum is saying the same thing as an alternative suggestion, I just wonder how much credence we should give to that.
It's obviously entirely up to members how much credence to give to any of the objections in the document. I think we've had some governance advice in relation to Councillor Blake's request to address the meeting. So maybe ask Claire just to outline what that advice was.
Thanks, Chairman. Whilst there is a standing order that permits members who are not members of the committee to address that committee at your discretion, at Chairman's discretion, my advice is that councillors who have lodged objections have done so in writing, so therefore they have a direct non-pecuniary interest. So Standing Order 17.3 does not permit them to address the committee any more than any other objector to the speed order. And Councillor Blake has been advised of that by the proper officer.
Okay, Patsy.
Yes, well, you know, you've got the local members all in agreement with a certain way forward for this. I think we've got the Community Council, they're supporting the Community Council as well. And I, for one, would say that quite often community councils feel that they're not taken notice of, you know, their opinions are not important. But actually, in a situation like this, where they all live on this, in this area, on this road, around this village, I think it would be really most inappropriate for us not to pay attention to the local members and the local community council. So I personally would, they seem to want to, from what I can read of it, they seem to want the 40-mile-an-hour limit. They just don't want the notices to be repositioned. And I just don't see why we would go against the local members and the local community council, who I think in this case probably know better than us. So that would be what I would be proposing.
You proposing that formally, Patsy, yeah?
I will propose that formally.
Okay. Finlay?
I think it was speaking to the local people and also Councillor Blake. There are there's a lot of concerns regarding where these signs are going to be moved to, on a blind corner, on where the road's shaded and ice and whatever that through experience has caused the problem. So I'm happy to second Councillor Gilroy and not agreeing to the implementation of the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit.
I just asked, maybe give time to just reflect on it, but paragraph 4, the options, it gives you options A, B, C and D, just when we come back to it in a second, but just to be absolutely clear, if it's one of those options you're going for, and if so, I think for the benefit of the minute and the accuracy, which of those options it actually is.
I would be proposing that option B, which is to implement a 40-mile-per-hour speed limit over the length of the current 50-mile-per-hour speed limit, and make other changes at gateways and within the community as option 1, if that is appropriate.
Thanks for that, that's clear. Okay, Ronnie?
Can I have clarification what the area committee actual decision was? It's lower the speed limit apply over a shorter length, was it? And there's some views that it's lower the speed limit but apply over the same length. Some people want that, but the area committee wants it over the shorter length. So what are we actually saying? I mean, I agree, you know, that we should take these views on board, but it's up to us to make that decision. And I think this time, you know, there is a case to go with what the locals want, but you know, it's up to us to decide as a committee to take along the views, you know, the road officers, the police, and the local knowledge, and then we make that decision. But I'm not sure what we're actually going to agree to here. For example, I think Tom McCourty, one of the local councillors, Councillor McCourty, agrees with the area committee decision, which was the recommendation to lower the speed limit, apply it over a shorter length. Councillor Blake supports the reduction, but considers it should apply to over the same extent.
Same thing, yeah?
No.
Okay.
No, over I think what Councillor Blake's saying is support the 40 mile, but should apply over the same extent as 50 mile, as just now.
You can ask John to come in and clarify this. Agreed at the area committee.
Thank you, Chair. I'll hope and try and clarify. The proposal that has been consistently put forward in consideration by this committee twice and by the area committee was to lower the speed limit to 40 miles per hour and to have that over a shorter length than the existing. Councillor Blake has been consistent in agreeing with the 40 mile per hour but wishing it over the same length as the 50, and that's the same position with the Community Council. Two of the members have changed their views from when they were consulted in the normal process in developing these proposals to take to the area committee and for consideration at this committee. It's only at this, when the order has been advertised, that they've, I hope I'm not out of turn here, they've changed their minds and now agreed to the objections submitted by Councillor Blake. Could I also mention that option 4.1b, apologies for my error, that if we were to go for that option, we would need to advertise an order again for the lower limit and then go to the implementation stage. Sorry for that error and missing out that step. But if there's any further clarification, I'm happy to help.
Does that clarify the position for members? Patsy?
I mean, I'm just looking in the report, and I did speak to, funnily enough, at the area committee last night, all the members for Abbey Ward, and they are all in agreement with the Community Council's view that we should lower the limit but keep the same length and not change it for reasons of bends and dips and all the rest of it. And I just think it's in situations like this that we should pay attention to local community councils and the local members. And I think they know best, actually. And I would, so that is my, and if we've got to put out another order to say that's what we're doing, well, so be it. That's what we've got to do.
That, Patsy. Do we have any other members? Okay, we have a motion from Patsy, I think seconded by Finlay, was it? Okay, do members have any alternatives to that? No. Okay, so we're happy to go with that, and obviously the consequences will be a further order, obviously, advertised for that proposal. Okay, thanks very much. Excuse me. If you try to listen to the recording of this meeting in the online, I'm sure make interesting. Okay, can we turn to item number 17, the Harbour Management and Operation Port Marine Safety Code? Okay, can I ask the Director if he's got anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add to the report, Chair. Only to say that this now comes forward. We did report before on this, and we have taken some time just to try and get it absolutely right. And what you see today is our recommendations, and I trust that they will be satisfactory and acceptable. Thank you.
Okay, can I open up to members? Do you have any questions? Patsy?
Can I just have reassurance that with Kakubri Harbour, which I think you all know is a very busy harbour and very important to the economic well-being of Kakubri, that we're not doing anything here that would in any way restrict the fishing boats coming in and out of Kakubri?
Okay, James?
No, there's nothing in this paper that would prevent fishing boats using Kakubri Harbour at all. Nothing at all.
Okay. Any other members? Okay, happy with the report. Okay, can we turn to the recommendations then? Are members happy to note 2.1? Okay, 2.2? Okay, are we happy to agree 2.3? Are we happy to note 2.4? Happy to agree 2.5? And to note 2.6? And to agree 2.7? Okay, thank you very much. Really sure what I've just agreed to here, but I've just been handed a document that seems to be giving me some sort of responsibility. Thank you very much for that, James. Yeah, I did. I see. Fortunately, it looks awfully like what's actually hopefully already in the report, but in a big folder. Yeah, that's okay. Fortunately, I read that. Okay, folks, can we turn to item number 18? Okay, this is an update report to members on the progress we're making in relation to Dromore Harbour I know a particularly important issue to local members in that locality. Can I ask the Director if there's anything to add to the report?
Just to add, Chair, that I haven't had any further information on the outcome of the Oscar investigation, which is mentioned in the report, so I don't have anything further.
Can I open it up to members? Graham?
Thank you, Chair. No, I have no further update either, Alistair. I noticed you looking at me there. I'll be very brief. It's an excellent report. To do nothing is not an option. We have tried everything, council officers, MSPs, Drumore community. They've done all that they possibly can do. The situation is, the whole thing is at logjam status, and hopefully we can agree all the recommendations today and start to move the thing forward.
Very much, Graham. Yeah.
Chair, I would absolutely agree with Councillor Foster. It's time to move on, make some progress with this, and see a resolution for the community. They've waited long enough.
Yeah, thanks, Roberta.
Just to make it a full hand, I would agree as well.
Okay, do we have any other member wishing to contribute? Okay, I can see where the recommendations are going to go here then, but let's go through them anyway. Are we happy to note 2.1? Okay, and to reaffirm what we agreed previously in relation to 2.2? Okay, happy to agree 2.3? Okay, and happy to agree 2.4? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, folks, can we turn to item number 19, which is the Scottish Stations Fund potential station reopening opportunities. Obviously, the Scottish Government have made available a £30 million Scottish Stations Fund, and what the report is asking members to do today is effectively to agree to make a bid into that fund and outline some suggested proposals for that particular bid. Can I ask the Director if there's anything to add to the report?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open it up to members now. Ronnie?
Yeah, I'm just looking at an old newsletter that Sean and I produced back in 2008, and it's when the stag was getting done for Easter eggs. So it's been a wee while in the making. I'm happy with the report as it is, Chair. I know we've sort of prioritised there, and that's caused a lot of angst locally and in the press because they read things off the minutes without any decisions. I would like to suggest that Thornhill and Easter eggs go forward as a joint bid because they both had the stag. They're both pros and cons are very similar. So I would like to put that as a recommendation that Thornhill and Easter eggs go forward as a joint venture rather than the way it's prioritised in the paper.
That's right, Ronnie. Any other members? Jim?
Yeah, I noticed under 3.8 regarding the proposals for BTIC, there hasn't been a stag report done for that, although the action group are actually campaigning for that. Is there any way in which we can actually ask that a stag report actually is done for BTIC to actually try and progress one way or the other, whether it is feasible or not?
Chair, yes, yes, there is. The process of undertaking a stag study is a fairly expensive process, so I think there require to be some further work undertaken to see whether it's worth proceeding with that before committing the funds to a stag study of BTIC.
Okay, so would you bring forward a further report on what that would actually involve?
Yeah, I think our way forward with this would be to come back to committee with updates as we progress with work on the various options. I think what members will have to appreciate as to officers is that although there are 5 projects here, it may be that some don't progress as far as others, and that not all will necessarily end up with a bid to the fund.
So you're suggesting that before we actually put the bid forward, you'd require to do some additional work, and then we'd have to take a further decision as to which ones go forward, or will we be putting them all forward?
I would propose that we undertake further work. That some of the stag studies themselves were undertaken in 2008 at the latest, so there have been some changes in local circumstances since then, and there does need to be some further work to firm up on whether or not it's worth taking bids forward. It's at the minute these are 5 priority bids, 5 bids in priority order, but to take them all forward would be to perhaps spread the workload out too much over the 5.
Can I just ask what the timescale would be to that? Because obviously there's a particular closing dates for applications to be made, and when would that work actually be carried out?
The fund is, as far as I can recall, terminates in 2017-18, so it's quite a long timescale for any works. So, but we would hope to be looking to bid into the capital funds for 2015-16 onwards.
Members have a question, Jim?
I suppose one question is, will the stag appraisals that have already been done be more or less relevant today, because in some circumstances there'll be very little change year by year, so they'll still be fit for purpose, I would have thought. And I think the other thing is, if there's, whichever one it might be, is ready to be submitted, is that a potential to go? Or in other words, can you get 1 or 2 or 3 visits to the same fund, or would you have to go as a single application? If no, then there's the opportunity to develop early and maybe get in before other folk have got their act together with some of the bids, because we've already done a lot of work in advance that a few years ago.
Chair, there's no requirement to submit all bids at once. If an authority is looking to submit more than 1 bid, there's no requirement to go with them all in one shot.
Okay, Ronnie?
Just on the back of Jim, there's a lot of work being done in both Thornhill and Eastriggs. Things have changed. I mean, there's been the turn in the line, and Eastriggs is part of the GLA, which is a priority area for the council. I wonder if that would be taken into your deliberations when you're assessing how the bid's formulated.
I think it still has to be joint, Chair, because there's now a development with South Ayrshire and us, so it has to be a joint process.
Yeah, absolutely. Harry, do you want to come in and 2 comments?
Yeah, I mean, the relevant kind of environmental issues in terms of the economic factors affecting both Eastriggs and Thornhill are taken into account, and in particular with Thornhill, the joint work with East Ayrshire. And in terms of the work that's already been done in terms of the stag studies, they will generally still be relevant, but there may be issues that have arisen in the intervening period that we need to take into account as well when putting and perhaps update the stag studies on that basis. But there shouldn't be a need to repeat the work that's already been done.
Okay, can I bring Ian in and then Craig?
Yeah, it's just to welcome the considerations that have been given to the Stranraer to Glasgow line. Just one thing under 311, there was a plaque unveiling about a year or so ago for its 150th, the station's 150th anniversary. At that point, I think one of the sales representatives indicated that, I'm assuming it was Network Rail, were due to proceed with the sort of 5-year routine maintenance on that station. Now that's never happened, and if I read this correctly here, they're talking about maintenance from 2015. Now, given that the 5-year cycle had been broken because they were uncertain of the future of the Stranraer, is there any way we could ask Network Rail to hurry up and get that station painted up, and perhaps while they're at it, clean up the track all the way up to the bridge and get rid of that rusting car ramp? It's an absolute sight.
Yeah, I think that would be one of the intentions with any bid for Stranraer, would be to work with both Network Rail and the franchisee, who have some responsibility for the station buildings as well, to work jointly and put forward a proposal, perhaps taking into account the commitments that are already there within their maintenance plans. As far as I can recall, the Network Rail maintenance plan was for the 5-year period from 2014-15. It was a forward plan that we're looking to have the repainting included within.
Okay, can I bring you in, Craig?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just with 3.9 there on the stag studies regarding Eastriggs and Thornhill, It states in there that Eastriggs has a better economic case, although the Thornhill station would provide better value to the communities. And because of those two then, and what's been said here, I would be happy to second Councillor Ogilvy's proposal that both Thornhill and Eastriggs go forward as a joint bid.
Okay, any other member? Sorry, Jim, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. We seem to have dealt with that issue, and I'm happy with that. And I'm just a last question for Harry. On page 415, at the very last section on the 3.2 report, it talks about accessibility improvements for Kirkconnell railway station. And it talks about an opportunity from ScotRail access for all funding. Is that something you're still working on, or have you the opportunity to bid to that? Because I'm aware that the Kirkconnell community for a long time have been campaigning for improved access. Currently, they have to get a taxi to Sanker because they can't cross the line to get a southbound train.
It's certainly an issue that we are raising with the potential franchisees for the Scotland Rail contract from 2015 onwards, and it's something we'll continue to work on. It's not something that would be eligible for within the Switch Stations Fund.
Thanks for that.
Could I just clarify, Chair, sorry, when we were talking about a joint bid for Eastriggs and in Thornhill, that you're talking about an equal priority for the two stations rather than a joint bid?
Yeah, I think that's the main point, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Members have any other questions? Okay, let's go to the recommendations so we're absolutely clear what we're asking Harry to perform here. Okay, first of all, are members happy to note 2.1? Okay, happy to agree 2.2? Okay, in relation to 2.3, we're effectively happy with the recommended order of priority, but we see Thornhill and Eastrigg as having equal priority to be worked up. Is that agreed, yeah? Okay, and Jim?
Yeah, and also possibly add in there for a further report to come back regarding the possibility of a stag being done for BTIC.
Okay, happy with that? Okay, in relation to 2.4, can I just ask Harry to clarify in relation to capital funding, is that effectively that even if we bid into this fund, we'd still be looking to develop capital funding from the council in order to support these projects?
Yeah, it would most certainly be the case that any bid into the fund would require some match funding from other sources. So the fund won't fully fund any station reopenings or station refurbishments. The council would require to put in some contribution or seek funding elsewhere.
Okay, in relation to how we go forward then, what would, having agreed that we wish to take all the options forward, how do you envisage that being developed? Will you develop these in priority order one at a time and bring them back to this committee? Is that how it'll work?
It may be that we develop a number of them in parallel as well, Chair. The Sederunt board is being asked to commit some of its capital funding for 14-15 towards developing the case for some of these projects, some or all of these projects in fact, and it will depend on a number of factors including physical constraints and land availability in the various stations. So some, although they may be higher priority on the face of it, there may be issues that arise during the reviews that will take them down.
Okay, then our members therefore happy to note 2.4. Ronnie?
Can I just clarify about that funding again, the capital funding? They'll be looking for match funding, and if the council look for match funding, they might look at it from other sources. And that other source might be Sederunt, for example, and then Sederunt comes to the council and say, we want that money from the council.
Sederunt have got their own capital fund, but Harry, do you want to, given to them by the council already, of course?
The Sederunt's capital allocation does come from the council. It's bid into the council's programme by Sederunt. There would be other potential avenues for funding, including community funds that may be available in some of the areas.
Okay, so are we happy to note 2.4? Folks. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, can we go back to item number 10 then?
table with Stephen.
Okay, this report is in relation to the Waste Management Recycling PFI contract. I'm going to ask the Director if there's anything he wishes to add to the report before us.
There's nothing to add, Chair. Nothing.
Okay, can I open it up now to members? Okay, Craig.
Thank you, Chair. When I read through this report and the recommendations that are put forward, I did have my concerns for obviously agreeing to put another £600,000 into a contract that had been established and agreed on in the past. And I did have grave concerns about the use of added public funds going into this contract. However, on the back of that, Mr. Speedy kindly came to the Independents and answered the questions that we had our concerns about. And I'm much happier now on the report as it stands from when I first read it. Some of the issues that we're concerned, as I say, with the use of public money adding to a agreed contract, but I understand the variations that have come from that contract and being a long-term contract. You cannot always foresee the future and what happens within these contracts. Another issue that came up was a possibility of better marketing the Eco-Deco plant and any under-usage that we have of that particular facility at the moment. And by the fact I mean better marketing it, I mean by offering it out to other local authorities so that we can bring that plant up to its full usage. And that way we may be able to retain some of the monies by charging the authorities for disposing of their waste as such. But Mr. Speedy he's confirmed that the Eco-Deco plant side of it is virtually at capacity at the moment. So, but I mean, I still think that's an opportunity that should be retained, that we can look to take the Eco-Deco up to capacity. And if that means having other waste from other authorities going through the plant and we can therefore charge for them, then I think it's something we should be considering, certainly moving forward. As far as the recommendations go, I would like to alter recommendation 2.2. As it states, it's agreed to increase the annual payments by 600,000 on the PFI contract from January the 1st, 2014. But I would like to add to that and agree that a report come to this committee on an annual basis on the PFI contract. And the reason for that, that would give this committee the opportunity to monitor the extra payments that we'll be putting into this contract, and in future possibly give us the opportunity to reclaw some of those payments back if the economy picks up and the production from our contract is starting to benefit Shanks in the future. And by adding that extra point to that recommendation, I think it gives this council and this committee the opportunity to look at that again, and in future years we may not have to provide that extra funding to Shanks.
Okay. I'll bring Ronnie in at this point.
Thank you, Chair. I know there may be some questions that might be a commercial sensitivity asked at this for members' clarity, and I don't know, whether we should be making decisions on without the proper clarity if members have questions in their mind. For example, I would like to know what the price is per tonne we pay for the contract to Shanks, and I believe that may be of commercial sensitivity, and it might affect the way that members have to make a decision. So if I put that question forward, will that be answered, or will we need to go into camera?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Leader, if you were to ask me that question, I could not answer it in open chamber because it's been recorded. When we report contracts to Council for, say, our surfacing works or any project, we always just give the 3 tender prices. We don't divulge what cost each contractor is charging per square metre of asphalt, for example, because that's commercially sensitive and making up their bid. The unitary charge is a cost per tonne, which is commercially sensitive because other companies bidding for other similar projects would be able to note the level that Shanks are bidding at. So it is confidential, and I could answer it in private. I can write to you or give you that evidence out with the committee, but I couldn't answer it at the moment.
Chair, I think because of the nature of the contract and that, I think it may make a member decision, give more clarity to that member decision if I ask that question, because it then, it lets us know the dangers as councillors or otherwise, whether we accept this or not. So we'll ask that question.
Members believe that they require that information in order to make a decision. Is that you'd like that information in order to make a decision? Okay. Right, okay. So in that case, what I'll have to do is obviously suggest that we make this an exempt item and take it in private session. Are members happy to agree to that? Okay, folks. Okay, we'll do that. That does mean that I'm going to have to ask the members of the public to leave the meeting, and obviously to make sure that we sort the recordings that playing in rooms next door, and obviously give Alistair the opportunity to source that information.